Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special Breeders' Cup Friday edition of Out of the Gate. I'm Dan Ullman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this very special edition on Breeders' Cup Future Stars Friday. DRF Handicappers Mike Beer, Matt Bernier, and I will take a look at the 5 Breeders' Cup races on Friday, beginning with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. We'll take it in race order. Then it's the Juvenile Fillies Turf featuring the Chad Brown-trained newspaper of record, the Juvenile Fillies featuring Bellafina from the West Coast, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, and of course, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, a nice East-West matchup there. Chad Brown, 2-year-old, versus a Bob Baffert, 2-year-old. Nicole Russo is going to be talking about pedigrees in her pedigree pick segment. We've got 2 Time-Form U.S. segments from Craig Milkowski and David Aragona. Lots to cover on this special edition of Out of the Gate, so let's break Out of the Gate. Let's take a look at the field for the first Breeders' Cup race on Future Stars Friday. It's the Juvenile Turf Sprint. We're going 5.5 furlongs for $1 million. Approximate post time is 3:21. For expanded stakes previews of all the Breeders' Cup races on Friday and Saturday, where we cover each horse and each race, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. This is an overflow field, Mike. You might want to look for a price in here, and that's exactly what you're doing with a 20-1 shot on the morning line, and I really think the cutback in distance hits your horse, Stillwater Cove, right between the eyes.
Yeah, I'm hoping the turnback really works for her. She started out her career a pretty good sprinter early on. She broke her maiden at Keeneland on dirt like every Wesley Ward 2-year-old in the world does, won first time out. Her stakes and turf debut came in the Albany Stakes at Royal Ascot, and she got bumped at the start there and then flew early. She went way too fast and got tired in the stretch. She won her turf sprint on her return at Saratoga, a really impressive win at Saratoga where they rated her off the pace. I liked that they sat with her in that spot and she won easily. And then this was her last start. They took her up to Canada for the Grade 1 Natama Stakes, and she ran well on this race, Dan. This was a really fast pace. She chased it all the way. You're going to see here at the top of the stretch. This is a very long stretch at Woodbine. She's going to take over the lead here, but the closers are coming. It's too late for her, too much for her, and she can't hold on at the end, but she ran really well considering how fast this pace was.
I agree with everything you're saying. This distance is probably a little bit too far for her at this point in her development, but 2, this was a very fast pace, and you're just going to see the closers come in and hail her in the lane. She's the only part of the pace hanging around, and I think she can sit a second flight trip in behind the pace, and there should be some pace in this spot. I'm hoping that the number 10 So Perfect can at least stay within striking range. Aidan O'Brien won this race last year with Declaration of Peace at 14-1, and So Perfect is 10-1 on the morning line, a filly like Mike's top selection. We're going to go back to her most recent start, and that was the Group 1 Cheveley Park Stakes, and she's on the outside now with a big look at this in 4th, and she's going to bake the front, and it looks like that So Perfect is on her way to winning this race, and some folks are going to be disappointed that she actually finishes 3rd, but I think this was a very strong edition of the Cheveley Park. The 4th place horse came back to finish 3rd in a Group 1. The 7th place horse came back to run 2nd in a Group 2. The 8th place horse came back to run 2nd in a Group 3. These are legitimate 2-year-old sprinters in Europe, and So Perfect is what, 3/4 of a length behind them. 2 starts back against the boys in the Group 1 Phoenix Stakes. She finished ahead one of the major contenders in this race, Sergei Prokofiev, one of her stablemates. I'm going to give the 10 So Perfect a little bit of a chance with a slight cutback in distance from 6 furlongs to 5.5. Our colleague Matt Bernier is going to be covering all of the Breeders' Cup action live at Churchill Downs for the NBC telecast, and he also likes a long shot in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint.
Juvenile Turf Sprint Friday afternoon. I'm going to go to the outside with the number 12 Pocket Dynamo. He's 20-1 on the morning line. We're going to go back to the Cornwallis Stakes, his most recent start, and everyone and their brother, you can understand why they're excited by a horse like Sergei Prokofiev with that big move that he made, very eye-catching. But you're also going to notice down on the inside, Pocket Dynamo, he had no chance to ever run at any point, and I feel like there's a real scenario where if he was allowed to get clear and able to get clear, maybe he doesn't win, but I think he does put in a serious late bid, something similar to what we saw from Sergei Prokofiev. It is also worth noting those races over the summer for Pocket Dynamo, he had showed a little bit more early speed, so that outside post is certainly no bargain. He's 20-1 on the morning line. I do wonder if he can get a little bit closer to the pace. He's going to give up ground at some point, there's no question about it. But I think that time form ratings that he had been earning over the summer, I think they at least translate pretty well here. Drawing a line through that Cornwallis Stakes, certainly a troubled trip, should offer some value. The number 12 horse, Pocket Dynamo, 20-1 on the morning line, hopefully kicking things off in a big way on Breeders' Cup weekend. I like him in the Juvenile Turf Sprint.
Let's throw up the field for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. It's carded as race number 6 at Churchill Downs. We're going a mile on the grass for 2-year-old fillies. $1 million is the purse, and our coverage is presented by the November sale at Fasig-Tipton. For expanded stakes previews of all the Breeders' Cup races, plus daily workout reports from Mike Welsh, handicapping webinars from Mike Watchmaker, Brad Free, and Timeform US, and lots more, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Chad Brown's got the favorite in here, the 6 newspaper of record. She's 2 for 2 in her career. We'll get to her in a minute, but there's another North American-based filly that's undefeated from 2 starts, and she draws a nice inside post position. Let's talk a little bit about the 1 Concrete Rose. I really like her tactical speed and the professionalism she showed in the Jessamine at Keeneland.
Yeah, I did too. I like the way that she's upped her game a little bit in that race. It was her 2nd career start. They sprinted her at Saratoga, and she came with a flying finish to get up there. They stretched her out for this race. Let's take a look at the Jessamine right now. She got a really nice trip in this race. Sitting in behind, you can see Jose Lescano angling her out here in the stretch. But once again, Dan, much like she did in her debut, she finishes in this race, and that's a good sign for this filly. She's going to have to improve to win this race, but she's got a great post, and if she can finish like this, she can get a piece of this.
Lescano did everything right, broke really sharply with Concrete Rose. No surprise, because she was stretching out 3 furlongs off her career debut, and Jose was very confident. He was just looking for the other speed, waited for someone to clear, stayed inside, got that outside path, and you saw once she changed leads, she kicked it into another gear. I think a similar trip is coming in here, and she's an interesting price alternative to the favorite, the horse to beat, and a filly with star potential. Mike, tell us about newspaper of record.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with her now. They're going to step her up into the Breeders' Cup, but this is where she's been heading since day one. They went over to Ireland to buy her as a yearling, and they got her over here this year. She was super impressive, winning first time out at Saratoga. Yielding ground, she was a little green in that race, but just tracked the pace and won for fun. They came back in the Miss Gorilla. This is what Chad does with his good 2-year-old turf fillies. They put her right on the lead in this spot, Dan, and you can see Irad Ortiz. He's just going to shake her up a little bit right here, and it is all over. She comes flying home in here. This is bolting away from the field like a real good horse, and to me, she's just way the horse to beat on Friday, and I'm not going to try and beat her.
You made her a horse watch here on out of the gate after her debut, where she finished like a car, reminiscent of the way Lady Eli won her career debut for Chad Brown. Lady Eli also won the Miss Grillo before winning the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf and becoming one of the more popular horses that we've seen in recent years. You mentioned this horse's great tactical speed. Barring a disastrous break, she's going to be right in the thick of things turning into the stretch. She's going to be one of the shorter price favorites on Friday, but boy, she's the filly to beat. I'm going to take a slight stab against her, however, with the number 3, Lily's Candle, coming in from France. This horse was purchased by noted horse owner Martin Schwartz prior to her most recent start. A Group 1 race in France that might not have been true Group 1 quality, but I like the way she finished the Prix Marcel Boussac. We're going to take a look at that race right now, and this is a filly that showed some speed earlier in her career, but she is last with 2 furlongs to go in those orange silks. She's going to alter course to the outside, and then she's going to come with a good, steady, sustained run to win at this mile distance, and I think a mile is really what she wants. She's proven on both soft and firm ground, but to me, she's the kind of filly that I think is now more comfortable coming from this off-the-pace style, and she might need some pace in this race. Lily's Candle, though, I like the fact that Martin Schwartz bought this horse. Maybe she'll end up in Chad Brown's barn down the road in North America, but she's 8-1. I think she fits very well in here, but she's going to have to improve. They're all going to have to improve to beat newspaper of record. We're going to check out Matt Bernier's pick, then we're going to go over to Nicole Russo for her pedigree pick segment, and then Craig Milkowski for Timeform US's pace projector. Stay with us. We got plenty more handicapping on Future Stars Friday at the Breeders' Cup.
Juvenile Fillies Turf. To be honest with you, I initially wanted to go against newspaper of record, not because of what she's done on the racetrack. It's hard to argue with what she's accomplished in 2 lifetime starts and as fast as she's run. But I was really interested in East. I think East coming in from Europe is quite a nice filly, and I think she might end up being a pretty solid one. And then, unfortunately, the post position draw happened and she drew the far outside. And I just think there's going to be way too much for her to overcome, especially with a horse as good as newspaper of record. It looks like she could be the next big filly in Chad's barn. Look, she's run both of her races on yielding turf. I can understand anyone that was concerned going into the Breeders' Cup saying, well, what happens if she gets firm going? Is she quite as good? Well, based on what's happening outside right now, you're going to be dealing with, at the very best, I would imagine, good, but it's going to be even worse than that if I had to really put some money on it. It sounds like, from what you hear down here, yielding to soft going, 3 to 5 inches of rain is supposed to fall over the next day or 2. So, therefore, you're probably dealing with some testing ground, something that newspaper of record's already proven over. I'm not going to try and reinvent the wheel. newspaper record for me. I think she's the shortest price of the weekend, and I think she's the most likely winner on Breeders' Cup weekend.
Hey everyone, Nicole Russo coming to you from Louisville, Kentucky, where the Breeders' Cup kicks off with Future Stars Friday. All 5 two-year-old races on the Breeders' Cup program being contested on the same card. It's a really fun card, especially if you're into pedigree analysis. As always, let's take a look around for some clues with some horses trying kind of different things here. Now, Breeders' Cup Juvenile entrant Complexity is unbeaten in 2 starts, including the Grade 1 Champagne Stakes at Belmont. Some people have expressed that distance might be a bit of a question for him. The Champagne is at a mile. He's only going an extra 16th here, but that's a 1-turn mile at Belmont Park, and that second turn can sometimes be as much of a mental hurdle for these young horses as anything. Sire McLean's Music, of course, so brilliant in his only start, did sire Preakness Stakes winner Cloud Computing in his first crop. However, his other top runners, like Gulfstream Sprint winner Classic Rock, had been best going shorter. Complexity is out of a mare by Yes It's True, so another speed influence there. She has already produced Valadorna, who ran second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies a couple of years ago and is a graded stakes winner going 2 turns at Keeneland. I do think the middle distances at a mile to a mile and a 16th are going to be where Complexity tops out. We'll see if he's as effective with that brilliance around 2 turns. Finishing second in the Champagne was the closing Code of Honor, who was coming off a maiden win at Saratoga. He's from the first crop of European champion Noble Mission, and did I think his foals would be winners in sprint maidens or this good early in their careers? No way. The full brother to the great Frankel really blossomed at age 5 when he was a multiple Group 1 winner, of course, going long in Europe. I really expect his runners to develop with age and added distance. Now, Code of Honor's dam reunited, won the Thoroughbred Club of America at Keeneland, and was already the dam of graded place juvenile big league. So that's clearly where Code of Honor is getting the precocity from. But I do think that thanks to his sire, he'll relish that extra 16th of a mile in the juvenile. Another horse stretching out on the Friday program is Uncle Benny, who had an automatic berth in the Juvenile Turf Sprint thanks to his win in the Futurity at 6 furlongs, but he's chosen to instead go in the Juvenile Turf on the Friday card at a mile, and I like that choice a bit based on his pedigree. These are the first U.S. sired 2-year-olds by declaration of war. Another European best runner who was at his best going longer. A Group 1 winner who was 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Classic in his only try on dirt. Now, declaration of war by a very good juvenile sire in Warfront, so that might be helping him out with his 2-year-olds. He'll have a couple from this crop in the Juvenile Turf, as he's also the sire of With Anticipation winner Opry. Nothing but route ability in Uncle Benny's female family. Grade 1 winners Star, Stellar Jane, Star Billing all appear on the page. So he really might be a little bit of a sleeper stretching out here. Thanks for tuning in to our Breeders' Cup Friday coverage on Out of the Gate. Now let's get you over to Craig for some Timeform US pace projections.
Hi, this is Craig Milkowski of Timeform US, and today I'm going to talk about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile being run as the 9th race on Friday at Churchill, and we're going to look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. First, we'll start out with the preview page as kind of a preview of the pace projector, which you can see in the upper right-hand corner, and you can see there is just a ton of speed in this race. We have, I believe it's 4 horses shown as leader. We have another shown as a speed horse, and there's several more listed as trackers, horses that like to sit just off the pace and make their run sooner rather than waiting until the stretch. Keep in mind, we're going to show this race in the pace projector as having a fast pace, but this is a dirt race for 2-year-olds. It doesn't necessarily mean that speed horses can't win. Sometimes a lot of people make that assumption that, oh, it's a hot pace, I got to look for closers. But I do think they deserve a little extra credit in races like this. Now, when we do look at the pace projector, you're going to see that number 6, Complexity, is clearly shown in the lead. So despite the fact that it's listed as a fast pace, he's a horse we think that is the speed of the speed and should be able to get out there by himself without some other horses really gunning for him and trying to press. Complexity is a really good horse in here. He's won both of his races so far. We can look at his PPs and see he was really impressive first time out. He broke a little bit slowly that day, but he rushed up from the rail, was able to squeeze through, something that's not easy to do for a 2-year-old, and he just drew away from the field from there. He then jumped right in the stakes competition, the Grade 1 Champagne, doing the Grade 1 one-turn mile, and he was just as impressive. He opened up a clear lead right away and pulled away around the turn, opened up a big lead, and kind of cruised home late. So he's going to be very tough despite the fast pace and the other speed in here. The next one we want to look at is the horse that's probably going to be the morning line favorite sent to us from trainer Bob Baffert, and that's Game Winner. He's another horse that's undefeated in 3 starts. You notice he's got ascending speed figures up to that lofty 116 last time, right in the same ballpark as Complexity's 118. Very good horse. I think these two both have very bright futures. Hopefully they'll stay healthy and both be on the Derby trail, and we'll see plenty more of them. But what we want to look at now is a couple of the other horses here who might be able to pick up the pieces if the pace gets too hot, if these horses like Complexity doesn't like that second turn. And the first one we're going to start with is Shug McGahee trained Code of Honor. He's a horse that surprised a lot of people. Shug doesn't win a lot of races first time out. This one went wire to wire at Saratoga at a nice 6-1 price. So he showed a lot of talent that day. He too jumped up into the Grade 1 Champagne, where he had a tough break. He was bumped. He kind of stumbled coming out of there. He was far behind. He did make a nice run late to get within 3 lengths. And I think with a better trip and given the pace, he had a solid pace that day to run into, but I think this one's going to be quicker. They should be tiring a little more late. And I really think Code of Honor's got a big shot here to beat the 2 favorites. Another that I want to talk about is Standard Deviation. He's the other Chad Brown in the field. He doesn't have the notoriety of Complexity at this point, but he's a horse that will definitely be running late. He won first out as well at Saratoga in an off the turf event. Then he went to Keeneland for the Breeders' Futurity, where he drew the dreaded 13 post. He had kind of a no-hope trip there. He was wide the whole way around. He made a nice move around the turn to get it into contention and before flattening out late. But the pace was nothing special that day. It probably wasn't the strongest field. But if you're looking for a price to pick up the pieces, he's probably one that can do it. I expect improvement out of him. I think he's much better horse than that 97 speed figure we saw that day. Whether it's enough to get him into the winner's circle is another question, but I definitely think he can be in your tries and supers in here. That's it for the Timeform US Pace Projector segment for today, and we'll be right back with more out of the gate after this break.
DRF Sports Forum Digital Edition, your ultimate weekly betting guide. Published by Daily Racing Form, DRF Sports Forum delivers all of the analysis and insight you need for every NFL game and more than 40 college football matchups. Beat the spread with powerful trends and sharp angles. Tap into best bets, expert picks, parlay winners, and more. All for just $4.99 per issue. Get this week's edition free. Visit drf.com/sportsforum. Enter code DRF Sports.
The stars will align on November 4th when the top buyers from around the globe gather at Fasig-Tipton for the world's premier breeding stock event. One spectacular evening with a catalog featuring no less than 70 Grade A Stakes winners or producers, with nearly half of those being Grade 1s. Plus a stellar selection of Breeders' Cup winners, champions, and selected weanlings. No other sale packs as much energy and excitement into a single session. Join us for a night of stars, the November sale at Fasig-Tipton. Where would you be?
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's throw up the field for race number 7 at Churchill Downs on Breeders' Cup Friday. It is the Grade 1 $2 million Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies at a mile and a 16th. For expanded stakes previews of all the Breeders' Cup races and lots more, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Our Juvenile Fillies coverage is presented by the November sale at Fasig-Tipton, to be held the Sunday after the Breeders' Cup in Lexington, Kentucky. Fine field with the favorite on the outside, the number 10 Bellafina, likely to go off favored off of her very impressive performance in the Chandelier last time out. We'll get to her in a minute, but the number 2 Serengeti Empress, Mike, has won her last 2 races by a combined 33 lengths, and it all started in this race, the Ellis Park debutante at 7 furlongs. I gotta think she's gonna be on the lead here.
Yeah, I do too. She's got post 2 in this race. This is the Ellis Park debutante here, where she contested the pace for a while early and then just absolutely dusts this field through the stretch. A really impressive win. She came back in her next start in the Grade 2 Pocahontas over the Juvenile Fillies track and trip, and she did the same thing, Dan. She had really easy speed that day, got right to the front, and never gave that field a chance. Comes into this race, you couldn't come into it in better form, Dan. 2 absolute blowout wins.
And that was a legitimate pace she set last time out in that Pocahontas, never giving anyone a chance. The problem in this spot is Bellafina does have a good amount of early speed as well, and breaking from the outside post, I'd think that she's going to hustle into a position where she stalks Serengeti Empress, and this pace should be fair to fast, and that could set things up for Restless Rider. I think this filly might have the most long-term potential of anyone in this race. I'm thinking Kentucky Oaks down the line, but Restless Rider, she's pretty good right now.
Yeah, she is pretty good right now. She's 3 for 4 to start her career. The lone loss in the Grade 1 spin away at Saratoga, where she did not have an easy trip, just got hung out wide the entire way there. Still ran well to be second, and then she came back out of that race. They stretched her out for the first time in the Grade 1 Alcibiades. We'll look at that race right now. And listen, she got a really good trip in this race, just sort of sitting in behind. You can see they took her clear at the top of the stretch, and she goes on. I like the way that she finishes this race off there. I think she's going to get a similar trip on Friday, and I think she's really good. I also like the fact that her first 2 career starts are both at Churchill Downs, and she was really impressive winning those 2. She really likes this track, and she's going to get a good trip in this race.
I think it was very important for her to get that 2-turn experience under her belt last time out while raiding off the pace. That was what's known as a comfortable victory, and she's coming into this race the right way for trainer Kenny McPeak. But the horse they're all going to have to beat's the morning line favorite. That's the 10 Bellafina. And we're going to take a look at her most recent race, the Grade 1 Chandelier Stakes. Now, her trainer Simon Callahan took blinkers off while stretching her out for the first time around 2 turns, and the question was, could she sit off another horse and could she get the mile in a 16th? And the answer, as you can see, is definitely yes. She sat off the pace, set her vibrance, attacked on the turn, and she's off to the races. And this was the most professional I've ever seen Bellafina. She was a horse that didn't change leads or was very late to change leads when wearing blinkers. Everything was professional and smooth in the Chandelier, and with this outside post, she should be sitting off Serengeti Empress, ready to ratchet up the attack on the far turn. Seems like Simon Callahan is a good 2-year-old filly every year, whether it's Abel Tasman or Moonshine Memories. He's got another good one in the 10 Bellafina. She's the favorite. She's my top pick to win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Let's go see who Matt likes.
Juvenile Fillies, really, it feels like there are just 2 or 3 horses that are head and shoulders above the other girls in this spot. That doesn't mean that the other girls can't improve. But Bellafina, Serengeti Empress, I suppose you want to include Jaywalk, who's going to be going out to 2 turns for the first time. Feels like from a speed figure standpoint, they are head and shoulders the best, including Restless Rider. We can't overlook her. I think the post position draw had a lot to do with ultimately where I went. I think Bellafina might just be the best 2-year-old filly that there is right now as far as the main track is concerned. And really with the post position draw, Serengeti Empress being drawn down toward the inside, I think her hand is forced. I think she must go. I think Bellafina takes up that perfect sort of stalking trip, similar to what we saw in the Chandelier out at Santa Anita a few weeks back, and I think she goes on and struts her stuff. Simon Callahan has talked very, very highly about this filly. Said he's the best. She's the best that he's ever had, and that's including Abel Tasman and Moonshine Memories and a number of other very talented ones. It just kind of feels like Bellafina is the right horse in this spot. She's not going to be any sort of price, but I think she's the most likely winner, and I'm going to go with her in the Juvenile Fillies.
Let's throw up the field for the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf to be contested as race number 8 at Churchill Downs on Future Stars Friday. $1 million is the purse. Again, a mile on the turf. We've got an overflow field for expanded stakes previews of all the Breeders' Cup races. We cover each horse in each Breeders' Cup race in detail, plus lots more. Visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. You've got a little bit of everything in this race. race, Mike. You got a lot of European entrants. You've got horses stretching out in distance, and you've even got a maiden, and a very talented one in the number 10, War of Will. This horse has had a lot of buzz surrounding him since day one. He's yet to win, but he's acquitted himself very well in some tough graded stakes spots.
Yeah, they haven't taken their time with him, that's for sure. They went right into graded stakes with him after he lost his debut. But he's run really well in the 2 graded stakes starts. They took him up to Woodbine for the first one, the Grade 1 Summer Stakes. He ran well that day. He just got run down late by a very good horse in Fog of War. Then they came right back and they ran him in the Bourbon at Keeneland. We'll look at that replay right now. He doesn't win this race either, Dan, but I think he ran well again. This horse has a big pedigree, and there's something there with him. He's just, maybe this is too much too soon as they press on to the Breeders' Cup, but I like this performance. He picked up the pace around the second turn in here, and he's holding on very grimly here. He's going to make it down inside the stripes, and they finally come and get him very late in this race. I thought this was a nice performance. I like his speed. He doesn't have to be on the lead. He's going to be forward in this race, and I just feel like this is maybe the chance. Get him at a price. This is a good field to be sure. He's going to have to be at his absolute best, but I think there's something there with this horse.
And I think he's still learning with each and every start, and I think that was a legitimate pace over a fairly deep Keeneland turf course. And you saw that race at the end was dominated by stalkers, and especially the Todd Pletcher trained Current, who won that race by a nose, also back in here. So I think the fact that he was still plugging along after setting that legitimate pace is a good sign for War of Will. And with a lot of Europeans in here, he can be very close to a moderate pace. Maybe he can sprint on home at a price. Perhaps the top European entrant drew the worst post position. That's the number 14, Anthony Van Dyke. He's trained by Aidan O'Brien, ridden by Ryan Moore. These connections overcame post 14 a couple of years ago in the Breeders' Cup in this very race with Hit It a Bomb. We'll see if Anthony Van Dyke can overcome the post. He's taken on some top-notch competition in Europe. We'll go back to his most recent start, the Group 1 Darley Dewhurst Stakes, and the winner of this race, Too Darn Hot, might be a star in the making. Anthony Van Dyke is down towards the inside. He made the front. He's going to plug along. I think the 7 furlongs, A, little sharp for him, and B, the company a little too tough for him. This Too Darn Hot's a nice horse. His prior start, the Group 1 Vincent O'Brien National Stakes, he also caught a very talented 2-year-old in Europe named Quarto. Getting a little bit of class relief here might be the key for Anthony Van Dyke. I like that this son of Galileo gets Lasix as he stretches out another furlong, and now it's up to the great Ryan Moore to work out a trip from post position 14. But Anthony Van Dyke is going to be my top selection in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Matt Bernier likes a European invader as well. It's not Anthony Van Dyke. Let's find out who right now.
Juvenile Turf, I like the Godolphin entrant in here for Charlie Appleby and William Buick. That is the number 5, Line of Duty. We're going to go back to his most recent start. This is the Prix de Condé out at Chantilly, and I think there's a couple things that I like about this race. The distance. We know that the mile here isn't going to be an issue because this race over in France was contested at 1 1/8, and he took that very, very easily. I love the acceleration that he shows. He's in and amongst horses. I know it's not a big field, but boy, once he found that seam, he really fired through in a big, big way. That to me signifies a very talented horse, nice turn of foot. But also, more importantly, I think it's something that you just have to factor in with all these turf races this weekend. That race came over good soft going, good too soft, however you'd like to call it, but good soft. This here, at the very least, is going to be good soft, if not worse. So at least he's proven himself over some testing ground. The distance isn't going to be a problem. He might be a middling price. I'd hope for that sort of 8-1 range on a horse like this. I think there's a lot to like here about Line of Duty. He's the number 5 horse again going out for Godolphin. Charlie Appleby, William Buick.
Hey everybody, welcome to JK's Play of the Day. Yep, you're right. I am on an airplane, travel issues, heading back and forth from Louisville. Hopefully this guy behind me in the picture isn't wanted and doesn't get upset that he's being broadcast over the waves of the DRF. Play of the Day this week. It's a play that I'm going to be playing in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. So hopefully if you're playing in that contest, you won't copy the bet here. We're going to go with a big double. We're going to play a really big double starting in race 6. I believe it's race 6. Race 6 with the single there will be Newspaper of Record, 2-year-old filly for Trad Brown, running on the turf. Her 2 performances previous this year were extremely impressive. Has been working well. Lots of backstretch buzz about this filly. I think she's going to be extremely tough in this spot. And then going on into the next race will be the Juvenile Fillies. A negative opinion against Serengeti Empress. So what I'm going to be doing there is I'm going to spread a little bit. I'm going to use the 3 Vibrants, 4 Restless Rider, 7 Jaywalk, 8 Sippacan Harbor, and 10 Bellafina. Obviously, I think Bellafina is the most likely winner. Her races in Southern California this year have been extremely impressive. Restless Rider has been training well. Looks great in the workouts in the morning. Also, her race at Keeneland was extremely impressive. And the rest of them, just going to use a little bit defensively. I still think they're all good. I think Jaywalk, being forwardly placed, how she ran in the Frizette, I think she could be tough. And then Vibrance is a sneaky one, a little bit of a longer price horse. Mike McCarthy has like 30 horses in training. 5 of them are in the Breeders' Cup. I think that horse could be a little bit sneaky. Wasn't on the right part of the track last time, and I think she could improve a little bit, at least for a piece, but I'm going to use her defensively since I'll be making such an aggressive play in the Breeders' Cup betting challenge. Good luck. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona for this week's Timeform US Spotlight, the first of 2 on this Breeders' Cup week. Taking a look at Friday's card, I want to focus on the 7th race of Churchill Downs. It's the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, the dirt race, and it's a pretty strong field that's been assembled, led by the number 10 horse Bellafina, who is the favorite on the morning line. We'll take a look at the entire field, and one of the things you want to notice about this race is the running styles of all the horses in this field. You've got a bunch of horses with a tracker style, more of stalking types, a bunch of horses that want to go to the lead, one of which is Bellafina, another is Serengeti Empress, and that often is going to lead to a situation where the pace could get pretty heated on the front end, and that is indeed what the Timeform US pace projector is predicting. You see that red bar indicating a fast pace, and well, we're likely going to see the 2 horses that are out in front hook up in the early stages because I think they have to use Bellafina's speed from an outside post position at Churchill Downs. They head right into the first turn, and they're going to want to get over and save some ground. So she's likely to go after Serengeti Empress, who Tom Amos has said will use that speed from the inside post position as they try to play the break and get over to the rail. And that could create a situation where they go pretty quickly up front. They are 2 of the best horses in the race, so maybe they take them all the way, but it does open the race up to some of the late runners. We'll take a look at the PPs of that favorite Bellafina, and really she is just far and away the horse to beat. I'm not sure that she's quite as dominant as a horse like, per se, Songbird was a few years ago, because while she does have the fastest speed figures in this race, I'm not convinced that she was beating the strongest competition in Southern California. A number of those horses have not gone on to do a whole lot, and we've seen, the second place finisher Vibrance, who is also in this race. She did earn a pretty high speed figure in that Chandelier, but had not really shown that kind of ability prior. So while Bellafina has earned the figures that she's earned, and she is the fastest horse in this race based on those figures, I do think that she really still has to prove it against some top quality competition, which she's going to face in this Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. The distance is also a minor concern for her because while she did get the 2 turns last time in the Chandelier, I didn't love the way she was finishing off that race, and there was a lot of speed on the dam side of her pedigree. While she has a quality road and a mile should be okay for her, I'm not sure that she's going to ultimately want to go a whole lot farther than this. So I respect Bellafina's talent, but she's going to be an awfully short price, and I think there are some other horses that you want to take a look at. One of those is the other speed horse, Serengeti Empress, who, like we said, is breaking from that inside post position. Now, she hasn't run quite as fast as Bellafina, and to me, that's a major concern because she's not going to get easier circumstances than she's gotten in her last 2 starts. She just dominated those 2 races at Ellis Park and Churchill on the front end against severely overmatched competition, and I know she won by those gigantic margins, but that had way more to do with who was behind her than anything else because the speed figures that she earned just aren't quite on the same level as some other horses in this race. And I think she's going to have to improve. I'm not sure she's quite going to be able to do it, but I wouldn't be surprised to see her run well in here. I'm actually interested in both of the horses coming out of New York. Maybe it's just my East Coast bias coming out, but I think both of these fillies are very interesting. And they're led by the Frizette winner, Jaywalk. I think this horse is going to be my pick in this race. She's a filly that I just really love her progression from the beginning of her career to that Frizette. She's a horse that John Service had really kept in sprint distances for the first 3 starts of her career. She went 5 and 5.5 furlongs in those 3 races, which is kind of surprising because she really is bred to run longer. Her dam has produced a multiple stakes winning router, and Cross Traffic was a winner of the Whitney. So there's a lot to suggest that she's ultimately going to want to race around 2 turns. And to me, she gave every indication that's the case in the Frizette last time when she kind of surprisingly found herself on the lead and really kicked for home well after settling moderate early fractions. I know the Timeform US speed figure for that race came back a little bit low. That was a very tough figure to make because the Frizette came up so fast in relation to the other races on that card. You really couldn't compare it to them in any meaningful way. So you just kind of have to make sort of an artificial number and see how it plays out in the future. I really liked just the optics of Jaywalk's win that day, and she proved too back at Delaware Park that she's perfectly capable of sitting behind horses, stalking the pace and rating. So I just think Jaywalk fits the dynamics of this race very well, and I expect her to take another step forward. I like Jaywalk in this race, but I also wouldn't discount Sipacan Harbor, who's coming into this race off a layoff for trainer Gary Contessa. She closed from well off the pace to win that spin away. I know she got pace to close into, and the speed figure didn't come back that high, but she did it the right way. She's clearly a very professional filly who has a good mind. She can sit behind horses. She can win on the lead. She can really do anything. And if you've been following the New York results recently in the recently completed Belmont meet, Gary Contessa is coming off one of the strongest fall meets of his entire training career. I mean, he finished second in the standings to Chad Brown, which is pretty remarkable considering some of the barns that operate on the New York circuit. So his runners are firing on all cylinders, and Sipacan Harbor is in great form. So I want to use her. I don't think she's quite good enough to beat a horse like Jaywalk or Bellafina, but if the pace heats up, maybe she can fall into the right trip. So I'm using the 2 New York fillies, giving the slight edge to Jaywalk in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies on Friday. Now let's send it back to the studio.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Time for our Friday DRF race of the day. It's the Grade 1 $2 million Breeders' Cup Juvenile at 1 1/16 at Churchill Downs. 2-year-old championship honors on the line in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and a classic East-West matchup between 2 undefeated colts. Complexity based in New York for Chad Brown. Game Winner based in Southern California for Bob Baffert. They're the 2 favorites in this race. Our friend and colleague Matt Bernier down at Churchill Downs is going to try to beat both of them. Let's find out who he likes.
The big one on Friday, it's the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, 1 1/16 on the main track. I like Chad Brown in here, but not the Chad Brown that most people like in Complexity. I like the number 8 Standard Deviation. This is a horse, when I look at the pedigree, just feels like distance is going to be what he wants. And to be honest, initially, I kind of thought maybe Turf, and who knows, maybe down the road it will be Turf, but he's proven himself pretty well on the main track. We're going to go back to his most recent start. This was the Breeders' Futurity down at Keeneland. He is wider than wide, and realistically, he lost this race at the post position draw. He drew post 13 out of 13. He had no chance to save any sort of ground, but the fact that he was as wide as he was, but he came with a pretty good sustained bid, and he's the only horse that was really doing any sort of running in behind Nix Go, or K Nix Go, however you would like to pronounce the winner's name. I feel like there's a lot to like here about Standard Deviation. My concern is that perhaps this is a little bit too soon for him. I think he's going to end up being a pretty solid 3-year-old and perhaps even a Derby contender. But there's a part of me that thinks the blinkers going on here, a move that Chad has had tremendous success with. Past 5 years, first-time blinkers graded stakes races, 4 for 10, 8 times in the money with a $9.12 ROI. He's going to get some pace to run at. Javier stays aboard, second off the bench. He's going to be a pretty solid price, too. I think there's a lot to like here about Standard Deviation. At the very least, he's one I think you want to use underneath, and perhaps he's one that you want to throw in your DRF Horse Watch mail. So maybe down the road he shows up in some of those bigger 3-year-old races. But you know what? I think he's got a big chance here on Friday afternoon. I like Standard Deviation in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile.
Matt's going for the long shot with Standard Deviation. Mike, you've been very impressed with Baffert's Game Winner, how he stretched out around 2 turns. We had the feeling off his sprint races that this was a grinder that was going to appreciate the extra distance, and boy, he looked good winning the American Pharoah.
Yeah, I mean, considering his pedigree, it's kind of amazing that he was actually able to win even his first career start at 6 furlongs. I know it's Baffert, and you expect these horses to be ready, but this horse, you know, with his pedigree, it's just all distance all over the place. He didn't even go favorite in his first start, but he won it anyway. They went right into the Grade 1 Del Mar Futurity, another sprint race. He was not favored there. He won it anyway, and then they stretched him out for his 3rd start. And this is more like what he wants to do. Here's the American Pharoah. He did stay up on the pace in this race, but he just stays on better than everybody else in this field. He is going away at the end. It just feels like a horse who's been improving in every race of his career. He doesn't even have to improve again necessarily to win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but he may just do that. And just to me, Dan, it's all about distance, and he wants it.
And he's not your typical brilliant 2-year-old. He's kind of like a blue-collar 2-year-old that shows up, wins maybe in workmanlike fashion, but does everything right. And for a lightly raced horse, he's so versatile. There's gas in this race. He doesn't need to be up and on the pace like he was in the American Pharoah. He can sit back like he did in that sprint race 2 starts back. I think he is way the horse to beat. Complexity might be the horse to catch, and yes, I realize there seems to be a lot of gas in this race, and Complexity is going to have to deal with other speeds as well as an extra 16th of a mile. mile and an extra turn. But take a look at this Champagne. This was a really impressive performance. Second lifetime start for Complexity following a gate-to-wire win at Saratoga, and he put distance between himself and the rest of this field on the turn, and he keeps on going really nicely. Can he get the mile and a 16th? I think he can get it. I'm not sure how much further he'll go than a mile and a 16th, but I think he can get the mile and a 16th, and I'm hoping that he can rate. I think he seemed very kind on the lead for the first 3-4 furlongs of the Champagne. I think this horse has a lot of talent, on par with the talent of Game Winner. Whether he'll get left alone on the lead at some point is a different story. But I want to give Complexity a little bit of a chance to make it 2 Breeders' Cup Juveniles in a row for trainer Chad Brown. We thank you so much for watching this special Friday Breeders' Cup edition of Out of the Gate, and there's lots more this week on DRF TV. We'll have the Saturday edition of Out of the Gate featuring all of the major Breeders' Cup races, culminating with the $6 million Breeders' Cup Classic. And you can follow us on social media, DRF TV, at DRF Video on Twitter for the latest news and updates. Again, Mike Welsh workout reports, webinars with Mike Watchmaker, Brad Free, and the Timeform US boys, and of course the Saturday Out of the Gate. That's it for this Friday edition of Out of the Gate. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.